Welcome to the 208 Fantasy Football Show. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots to discuss here today. We have got some sleepers to share with you, lots of news, and more importantly, hamburgers are way, way better than hot dogs.
Oh, no way. Hot
right
dogs.
now.
Oh,
Good
man.
evening, everybody.
Oh, what a take.
No, burgers are way better.
Listen,
way
I
better.
love a good burger, but dude, if I go to a party and they have hot dogs, I know I'm eating good. I'm going to eat good at a hot dog party, you know?
Burgers are way better. Done deal.
A good gourmet burger, absolutely. Love a good gourmet burger.
Well, let's get into it. If you're new to the channel, file on in, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, get into it, comment. We love people to comment, and we want you to win your fantasy football league. So let's get right into it. Let's start off as we always do. Let's get right into the news.
What's going on?
Chance, with Lineberry out, you got the news today. So what do we got?
Hey, big time NFC wide receiver finally signed his contract, and his name's not Brandon Ayuk. Okay, CeeDee Lamb finally signed a contract. He's got a contract. It's $136 million over 4 years with $39 million signing bonus. Makes him the second highest paid non-quarterback in the league, right behind Justin Jefferson. He beat out Nick Bosa for that. He is well paid, and the Cowboys they're in for that wide receiver for the next 4 years.
Yeah, and on a side note, so we now have to do what they're going to do with Dak, and I do believe they picked up Parsons' 5th year, so they've got him for another year. So that'll be interesting. But now all eyes are on Dak Prescott and the crazy receiver in San Francisco, which we'll talk about someday.
Yeah,
but it's nice to see.
And Jamar Chase has still been holding out. Jamar Chase has still been sitting. Yeah. He finally showed up to practice this week. But Jamar Chase is like, he's the next story. Brandon Ayuk at this point feels like old news. Like, we still don't have an outcome after 2 weeks of waiting. But Jamar Chase is also, looking at that contract. Do you think Jamar Chase eclipses CeeDee Lamb for a contract?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm going to say equal. Get some music going here. I think it's equal. I don't think it'll be any less, but I don't think it'll be more than JJ. So I think it'll be very close, tight in there to keep him happy.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. Like I said, I'm curious what's going to happen with Dak. I think that's important. That'll be the next one they got to figure out. We also got a little news out of Denver that we're kind of thinking. Your guys in Denver, Chance. What's your thoughts there?
One part of the news for fantasy makes me so happy. Denver Broncos likely to move on from Samaje Perine. They're going to test the trade market for Samaje, which opens up 56 receptions out of the backfield for Javonte, Jaleel McLaughlin, like 56 running back targets, not receptions, targets. That's a big number, and that's a big open number for those running back targets. Sadly, Tim Patrick, who got injured, came back, and then got injured again in training camp, who's been a stud for the Broncos for a lot of years. It does sound like the Broncos are in talks to trade him. He's probably going to get cut if they can't find a trade partner, but there seems to be a lot of interest for Tim Patrick around the league. He was just a steady Eddie for the Broncos for a long time, so just a bummer story because it was fun to see him come back. It was fun to see him. He's been, bled blue and orange as a Denver Broncos since they picked him up off of waivers. So, that's a bum to see that happen.
Yeah, I think he signed like a $30 million contract back in 2019 and then just hasn't been able to stay healthy since.
Yep.
In addition to with Samaje, you're 100% right. Just as a side note, and I will admit, he's not one of our sleepers, but McLaughlin in a Sean Payton offense, keep an eye on him when Samaje goes. Put him in your back pocket. He's going to get a lot of work out of the backfield.
I'm a huge Javonte truther, but I almost made Jaleel McLaughlin my sleeper because I think if Perine's gone, I think McLaughlin is explosive. I think Sean Payton really likes him. I think he is going to benefit from a lot of those vacated targets that Samaje Perine is getting out of. So I think absolutely, if you want a late round flyer, Jaleel McLaughlin could absolutely be that guy.
Yep. Keep an eye on him. A couple other pieces of news, probably not near as exciting, but Malik Willis was traded to the Packers. Not a big deal. I think for a 7th rounder or something like that. I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Yeah, Jalen Warren came out and said that his hamstring injury isn't as serious as they thought it was. He feels better. He feels like he's going to be good to go for week 1, which if you watched any of the last preseason game, Cordell Patterson looked like an absolute baller in that backfield too. So Arthur Smith is going to dupe us all again, and the Steelers backfield is going to be worthless with Cordell Patterson and Warren and Najee Harris. I don't know what to do.
So I got Warren on a really good value in one of our drafts, and we've been if everybody it's draft season. We have been drafting like mad here this last week. It's been nuts. One of my big leagues, I picked up Warren, super value, and I'm already looking to try to trade him. I'm a Steelers fan, so I'm trying to kind of make that happen now before the season because I do agree with you, Chance. So I'm hoping to steal some value in a trade already. And I think our last bit of news is the cut deadline's tomorrow. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. So the cut deadline is tomorrow. Teams have to be down to their 53-man rosters by tomorrow afternoon. So you're going to see a lot of movement. I mean, there's going to be players cut. There's going to be players traded. There's going to be players picked up. You know, there's always that one or two, maybe like Samaje Perine or another veteran that gets cut, that gets scooped back up by a team. I think we missed it in the news, but Juju Smith-Schuster was released by the Patriots, picked back up by the Chiefs, where he has familiarity. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. A lot of that's going to happen tomorrow. Teams choosing young draft picks over veteran guys, and those veteran guys still having value for teams that maybe they played with or that have need. Yep.
Agreed. Like I said, i.e. Samaje, Tim Patrick, they'll find a home. Just be interesting to see where they fall. So, and again, there will be injuries along the way in the season, right? The first little bit. So we'll see some movement there too. So always be on your toes. Always be locked into the 208. We'll get you the news you need to make sure you win your fantasy leagues. A couple other things that we talked about, Chance, just preseason games. We had our last week of preseason. Any takeaways you saw, other than my Bears being 4-0 in the preseason? I'm going to take it and run with it. So
yeah, the Bears were the winningest team in the preseason for the NFL. That was awesome. Just a few things. Bryce Young finally played in the preseason. I know that I feel like the Panthers caught a lot of flack when Bryce Young didn't play, and people are like, why don't you give this young man who struggled last year, for all intents and purposes looks like a bust, why don't you give him some playing time? Well, he played in a drive in their last preseason game. He went 6 of 8 for 70 yards and a touchdown with a QB rating of 140.6. So he looked good. I mean, I am rooting for a Bryce Young bounce back season. I don't want to see a first round quarterback just absolutely fall on his face. I'm not a big Panthers fan, but I hope he can have some good rebounds so that we can have some decent fantasy options in Carolina.
Yep. I agree. On those same lines, a couple quarterbacks that I saw I want to talk about. One, Trevor Lawrence looked pretty good against a very secondary, or second string, third string, maybe fourth string Falcons, where they won 31-0. But I'm hopeful for Trevor Lawrence this year. I think he's got some good pieces around him. And the other one I want to talk about is AR5. He did struggle against those Bengals, which we talked about in our last show. I'm not overly concerned yet. You guys all know that I'm an AR5 guy. I picked him up in many of my leagues, including a lot of my family leagues and things like that. I'm not pushing the panic button yet. I'm not putting him into the worry chamber or anything like that, or the cut, trade away. Hold on to him. I still believe in Shane Steichen. I think they're going to try to keep things vanilla for him and keep it easy. And maybe in those preseason games, see where he can limit, right? Think of the coach and your process. If I can push him a little bit to where I see the glaze come over and the worry go over, you're like, okay, that's too far. Let me back it back down. So maybe that's what they did a little bit there. But I'm not. The kid's an absolute freak of an
He's a
athlete.
stud.
Be
He's a
patient. Stick with him. So. Anything else on preseasons that you saw? Chance? Anybody you want to talk about? Running backs?
Well, I was
wide
going to say
receivers.
just a wide receiver update. You know, we all love that good sneaky rookie wide receiver that breaks out. Adonai Mitchell with AR-15 looked really good stepping in for Josh Downs. So Adonai Mitchell in that slot. I mean, maybe they have a pretty good connection there, him and Anthony Richardson. So, you know, maybe a guy to keep an eye on as you kind of, you know, pick some of those last picks, some of those later round picks. Adonai Mitchell could be a guy worth snatching.
One guy I'm going to throw you a sleeper flyer if you have kickers. Nobody cares about kickers, but one guy that I thought looked really good in the preseason is Jake Bates from the Detroit Lions.
Oh,
Now that Bagley is on IR, he's got a pretty good leg. Nobody's talking about him. Indoor kicker, put it in your back pocket.
I thought you were going to bring up Brandon Aubrey.
Test.
I think you're bringing up Brandon Aubrey, who kicked the 66-yard field goal with like 15 yards of room. He's
got a cannon of a leg.
Tied a record in the preseason, but it doesn't count because it's preseason.
Yep, it's preseason. Yep, for sure. Well, that is it for our news. That's it for our discussion.
That might be the most preseason talk I've had in a long time. That was some good preseason.
Well, we're jonesing for football, and it's finally here. We can't get enough of it. College games started this last weekend, right? So there's lots of little things going. I think many places high school games have started up. So it's football. We are all in. We even had a little bit of a weather change. It cooled off a little bit, and that's kind of rare for us. But it's like, ooh, I can feel the fall coming.
Yeah,
I can feel it coming.
Crispy. It's crispy in the mornings.
Let's get right into the meat and potatoes of our show. And we're talking 2024 sleepers. Pay attention to this one. We're going to help you out. We've got some good sneaky ones that I don't see too many people talking about. But let's get into it right now. It's hard picking out music, right? I want something kind of somber, but I still want something to get excited about too.
Yeah. You're talking about the sleepers, but it's also like the sleepers are the most hyped thing in fantasy football.
I know.
There's nothing better. The only thing better than hitting on a good sleeper is hitting on that first round pick that ends up being their position's number one. Drafting McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill and having him blow up, that's the best. Drafting a sleeper that is a top 12 guy, the second best thing in all fantasy football.
My favorite pick, and nobody cares, but I'm going to tell you the story anyway. I remember way back when Victor Cruz came out and he played that early preseason game, and I saw him make a couple of catches. I'm like, who's that kid? I want him on my fantasy team, and got him for dirt cheap and ended up winning that year. So you have to look out for those guys that are passing the eye test. So let's jump into it. Our first one out of the gate, Brian Thomas Jr. Chance, this is one of your guys. Let's rip it. What do you got here? Tell us about why he's a sleeper.
Okay, so we all know, and again, you know, we talk about what Puka Nacua did last year. We got a couple of absolute stud rookie wide receivers that have come into the league. And we know there's always going to be 1, 2, maybe 3 rookie wide receivers that really stand out and add value to your fantasy league. And people are having all the conversations about Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors is, you know, his highlight reel is wild. Keon Coleman is so much fun, and everyone wants him to be the guy in Buffalo. But I want to just think on Brian Thomas Jr. for a little bit, who was, again, a first-round pick, an absolute stud in college. His current ADP, 119, which makes him wide receiver 49. Okay, he's going around my boy Cortland Sutton, Tyler Lockett, a couple of guys there. But what I think makes Brian Thomas Jr. such a great sleeper pick, one, he looks the part. And if you look at any of his highlight stuff from the preseason, any of his camp stuff, he looks great. He's 6'3", 209. He's a big-bodied wide receiver. If he were to finish, right, what number 49 wide receiver from last year had 40 receptions, 600 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Okay. Last year in college, Brian Thomas, and I know college, NFL, very different, but his college stats with a good now NFL quarterback, he had 68 receptions for 1,177 yards and 17 touchdowns. This dude was a touchdown machine in college. He had more touchdowns than Malik Neighbors, who's getting all the hype as a rookie. So to me, Brian Thomas, I just think he is set to break out and really take that wide receiver one job in Jacksonville. Calvin Ridley's gone. Calvin Ridley vacates 136 targets. And then Evan Ingram last year, 143 targets for Evan Ingram. And we don't think that's not repeatable. He's not going to do that again. So you're going to have more targets available from both Calvin Ridley going and a regression to the mean from Evan Ingram. I don't see a way. We have the projected on here 60 catches, 800 yards, 6 touchdowns. Like that would be an awesome floor for him to have. But if Trevor Lawrence is who Trevor Lawrence has been, there's no way Brian Thomas finishes outside of the top 25 to me. I think he is at least a wide receiver 2. You're drafting him wide receiver 49 in the 10th round. Oh, all day.
I agree, Chance. I have gotten multiple shares of Brian Thomas Jr. Reports are he is difficult to cover. He's so quick, even if it's just slants and goes. Remember, he was the second fastest in the 40 at the combine this year, and all we remember is Xavier Worthy because he broke the record. So this kid has elite speed and can cause problems, and I really like him part of this offense. Easy top 25.
I do think it's just important to talk about because for me, another big part of like what Brian Thomas Jr. could be is that I think people are just kind of disappointed that Trevor Lawrence hasn't been football Jesus like we all thought he was going to be. We all thought Trevor Lawrence, football Jesus. But in 2023, he had a top 24 wide receiver in Calvin Ridley. And he was wide receiver 17. And in 2022, he had a top 12 wide receiver in Christian Kirk. Nobody remembers Christian Kirk being a top 11 wide receiver in 2022 because it was so everyone's like, Christian Kirk, really? Like such an unsexy pick and an unsexy finish. Those are the wide receivers that Trevor Lawrence has been able to sustain. So to me, if Brian Thomas steps in, obviously Christian Kirk's still there, man, that is upside that I will buy at a low price all day.
Yeah, he could easily be your wide receiver 3. Without a doubt, and you can get him fairly late. So Brian Thomas Jr., go get him. Keep an eye on him. He will pay dividends.
Yeah.
And again, if you're just joining us, smash that like button. If you're just tuning in, right? We're done with the show and you're tuning in, watching it after the live show. Man, hit that like button. We love to leave a comment, man. We love talking ball here. So moving on to our second guy. This is my guy, Rico Dowdle. Now there's some caveat here.
Tell me.
Yeah, there's some caveat here, which we'll talk about at the very end. So his current ADP is 148, RB 44. You can get him in the 12th round around J.K. Dobbins, Charbonnet, Chandler, Jalen Wright. Last year, he had 89 carries for 361 yards. That's over 4 yards a carry and 2 TDs. He also caught the ball 17 catches for 177 and then 4 TDs. Tony Pollard's gone, right? There was 252 available carries. Zeke comes back. That's 184 carries. If you simply just do the math, and he's going to be more productive than Zeke. Zeke's just older. Zeke might catch the ball in the backfield, maybe be a goal line back. But there's a reason why, and we all maybe disagree with it, but there was a reason why Dallas decided not to go get a running back, right? They're putting their cards in with Rico Dowdle here and Zeke Elliott. Dowdle appears to be the guy behind a decent offensive line that can do it. His floor, if you go, again, look at last year's stats and put him on there in 2023, adding some carries, he is easily a top 30 back. So that's 14 spots that I can get way, way late that nobody's picking Ezekiel Elliott or Rico Dowdle at the end. Somebody's got to run the ball. and I think it's Dowdle who's much, much younger. Again, his floor is RB 30. He could easily creep up into that 25. So don't be shy to grab him in the later rounds. They can't live on passing the ball all the time in Dallas. Somebody's going to get that work, and I think it's Dowdle.
Yeah, listen, I love this pick because if he's RB 44, he has every opportunity to be the starting running back on a high-powered offense. Like that, to me, would immediately make him a top 20 option at running back, even if he's just the starter on a good team. But he has the path to be the starter on the Dallas Cowboys, who are an absolute powerhouse of a scoring offense. So I love this pick. This is such a steal. Great pick, Matt.
Yeah. Again, you could, if he is your RB3 with that amount of upside, you're sitting really, really good. So moving on to our next one. Chance, this one is yours.
Oh.
This one's gonna shake the tree of a lot of people going, what are you talking about? So you convince us here. What do you got?
So I doubled up. I doubled up on this, and I think that I've had drafts where I have gone out and I have taken this combo at running back because the situation to me is just too juicy not to pick some of this fruit. You know what I'm saying? This is my sleeper fruit right here. And if Lineberry was able to join us today, Lineberry and I both, we just have a hard time quitting J.K. Dobbins. Okay, but my sleeper here is the Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins backfield, the Chargers backfield. Okay, currently Gus Edwards is going at 111, J.K. Dobbins at 130. Okay, that's running backs 38 or 42 respectively. So, in the area of Rico Dowdle, a little higher, okay, rounds 10, 11, okay, by Jerome Ford, Chase Brown, those are going above them. Zach Charbonnet, Ty Chandler below them. Okay, here's the deal. Last year, Gus Edwards, 198 carries, 810 yards, 13 touchdowns. Okay, not a ton of production yardage-wise, but he was also on the Baltimore Ravens where 800 yards of rushing went to Lamar Jackson. Okay, so now you move him with Greg Roman, who was his OC, who engineered those 13 touchdowns for Gus Edwards. Now you move them to the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh and an offensive line that looks studly. Okay, Jim Harbaugh at Michigan last year, between their top two backs, Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, they had 32 rushing touchdowns for Michigan last year. Michigan was old school, pound the rock, great O-line football. And I know people are like worried about Justin Herbert losing value, but to me, this is an even better thing. Justin Herbert's more likely to get one of these two players to the goal line than JJ McCarthy ever was for Blake Corum, right? It's just a different kind of offense with the same great O-line. So now I have two running backs who are on a run-heavy offense with a run-heavy OC, a run-heavy head coach, and a quarterback that can get them to the goal line. Here I'm picking these guys up. Austin Eckler, he left 230 touches on that team. Now I got to split 230 touches up, maybe to Gus, maybe between Gus and J.K. Dobbins. I think for me, easy top 12 running back group. And it's kind of cheating to say take both, but you can get Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. We'll know a lot by that first week. And if you pick up J.K. Dobbins and he is diddly squat after week 1, drop him for the next waiver wire hotness. It's not hard to drop some of those last round guys for who's going to be prominent on the waiver wire. And now I'm stuck with. Now I have Gus Edwards, who should absolutely push to have those double-digit touchdowns again on an offense that will see the goal line.
Yeah, this is one of those things where you're kind of like, you know what? I'm gambling. But that's part of what sleepers are. So understand that. You're gambling late. You're going to try to get both of these guys. If one of them doesn't pan out, it's okay. You got the other. If one gets injured, you got the other. I'm a big guy on Vidal. He's just not ready. Maybe by the end of the year, I who knows? But I think you're right. We know Harbaugh's going to run it. Why wouldn't you want a piece of it? Go get both of these guys.
Yeah.
Put him in the lineup. Worst case scenario, you're wrong on one, but you got the other.
And I think that just like your Rico Dowdle pick, like in round 10, if you're telling me I could have the RB1 on a good offense with a good coach, like if I can have an RB1 in round 10, that's an absolute value. That's an absolute steal of a guy that I can add to my RB1, my RB2. Maybe I have 3 running backs by the time I draft these guys.
Yeah, and understand your league too, because I think there Jerome Ford and right now Chase Brown are probably going ahead of these guys, which is pushing these guys down a little bit. So even more value is there. Just be aware of it. But I agree. I'm liking. I like these sleepers. Put them in your back pocket. Don't tell your friends about them. Just let them just keep pushing them down the ADP and go win your league with these guys potentially.
Yeah, big fan of this Chargers backfield.
Absolutely. Next up for me, Diontae Johnson. I am really liking this, and I will explain why.
Before you explain, I was so bummed. Matt, he asked me to text him who my sleepers were, and I was thinking about it. And then he texted me his sleepers, and Diontae Johnson was on there, and I was like, oh, he got him. Yeah, he just had to snag him before I did, because this goes back to that Bryce Young hype early on in the pod. This is a great pick. Yeah. We are aligned in mind on this one.
Nobody's talking about Diontae Johnson, right? He leaves the Steelers, and he's no longer any good. This, that, and the other. Has a so-so last year, but I do want to just kind of talk about why I think why he's a sleeper here. So his current ADP is 86. He's wide receiver 37th. You can get him in the 8th round. He's going around Godwin, Reed, Watson, Worthy. Okay, he joins Bryce Young, and with a new coaching staff. Bryce Young just didn't have much around him. And we're going to get to kind of some stats here in a second. But they bring in Dave Canales. They bring in Brad Isaac, I think that's how you say it, and Nathan Carroll. They are a Seattle group here, okay? So Canales worked with Russell, Geno, Baker, and basically when he was with them, they all had their best years. So there is a lot of hope and a lot of discussion that he can make Bryce Young better. Last year, Adam Thielen, and he was on fire with Bryce Young last year, who was 31 years old at the time. He finished with 130 catches, 1,014 yards, 4 TDs, wide receiver 31. Just those numbers alone puts him wide receiver 31, 6 spots above where Diontae Johnson is. Diontae Johnson's a way better wide receiver than Adam Thielen, right? Way better. So in addition to, if you take DK Metcalf's stats from when he was with Canales and that basically that OC group, you can see it on the screen: 66 catches, 1,100 yards, 8 TDs. If you remember, let's go back when we first talked about. I still am a big DK Metcalf guy. Chance, you were too. There was more left on that stat sheet than what was there. Potentially at least 4 or 5 more touchdowns. So I'm looking at this going, wow, he's definitely number one. Reports at a camp, he's crushing it. They are getting very good rapport, him and Bryce Young. I'm thinking, gosh, just based on some stats with Thielen and Metcalf, he's easily a top on his floor, a 20 to 15 wide receiver, if not anymore. If I take that, I'm getting way great value as he becomes a RB or a wide receiver 1 on an offense that maybe he's my wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 on my fantasy football team, who has potential top 15 better upside. Give me that all day long. I think this guy's going to eat, and he's got something to prove too. I'm excited. I think people should draft him all over the place.
Love
Anything
that.
to add to that?
I totally agree. I think Diontae Johnson, and I think the Diontae Johnson hate it's the Bryce Young effect, right? Like we forget how good he was in Seattle, in Pittsburgh, because Bryce Young is small and he was bad last year and he can't rebound. But again, anytime I can draft a team's target leader in fantasy, I love a target leader. People love to get a good wide receiver 2 or a good, like early rounds. I will take these late round value target leaders on an offense that probably is going to have a little bit more garbage time, probably going to be playing catch up more often than not. That to me sounds like an absolute score.
Yep. So, man, if you're listening, put a comment in. Let us know what you think. For right, wrong. Chance and I we're putting out receipts right now. You can guarantee that we will come back around into the season, assuming people play full season long, and we're going to see how we were. But I am very confident in our sleepers of what we got this year. So, as well with our rankings. So I'm really excited about it.
Speaking of receipts, this next sleeper for me. Oh boy, if you're watching, I don't want you to avert your eyes or shut us off immediately. I want you to hear me out when I talk about my tight end sleeper, Mike Gesicki. See, I've talked in some of our other pods about, the value of finding a sneaky sleeper tight end. And if you go back and look, typically 3 or 4 of the tight ends that finished top 12 on the season were not drafted as top 12 tight ends. To me, Mike Gesicki fits that mold. Okay. Currently, he's an ADP of 246, which makes him the tight end 30. Okay. So you're not going to draft this guy unless you have a huge league that goes to round 20. That's when he's going around Greg Dulcich, Dawson Knox, Michael Mayer, other waiver wire tight ends. Okay. To me, what makes Mike Gesicki stand out, okay, in 2023, rough year. He was in New England behind Hunter Henry. He had 29 catches, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns. Okay. He moved to Cincy, and Cincy from last year, their tight end room combined, which was a weird tight end room. Okay. You had some Drew Sample, some Irv Smith Jr., who didn't pan out, and their tight end reception leader, Tanner Hudson. Okay. I didn't even know who that was when I looked up these stats. I didn't even realize Tanner Hudson was in the league. Okay. There are 79 targets, 79 catches, 630 yards, and 4 touchdowns that tight end group put together. Matt, didn't you say those numbers were real Kyle Pitts numbers, right?
Yeah, they were absolutely. Kyle Pitts numbers last year.
So if Lineberry was on this pod, shout out Lineberry, he would be in love with Mike Gesicki, considering how much he loves Kyle Pitts and his real mediocre tight end play.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, ouch.
I know.
He'll be watching.
I hope he listens so he can hear that shot. Okay. But here's my thing with Mike Gesicki. If you look at the years in which Joe Burrow has been on, right? When Joe Burrow played really well, 2022, 2021, okay? Those were big years for this offense. And in those years, if you look at what their targets were available, there are 119 targets with both Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd now off the offense. 119 targets available. Now, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, they're going to get theirs, right? We don't know about the running backs. I love Chase Brown. I think Zach Moss is going to be good, but Jermaine Burton is their wide receiver 3 currently, or maybe Andrew Yoshevich. To me, Mike Gesicki, who is he's a tight end that has kind of just been forgotten about. But back in 2019, which seems like forever ago, okay? Oh, sorry, not even 2019, 2022, 2 years ago, Mike Gesicki was tied for 3rd in the league for tight end receptions, okay? He handled 212 receptions for Miami back in 2021. Then Mike McDaniels came. Mike McDaniels doesn't really throw to the tight end. He went to New England. He was buried behind Hunter Henry. And we just forget that Mike Gesicki is #good at football, right? So to me, coming in, being on a high-powered offense where their tight end always finishes for the last 4 years, their tight end has always finished in the top 5 on the team in receptions. You lose Mixon, you lose Boyd. To me, Mike Gesicki, he has a top 12 floor to me, just based on that offense. So that's my deep sleeper, tight end. If you end up punting the position, go pick yourself up some Mike Gesicki. See what he's got.
Yeah.
What do you think, Matt?
The thing I add to that, so it feels like Mike Gesicki's like 108 years old, right? He's 6'6", 250. He's 28 years old. He's going to be 29 here in October. But understand, which is still reasonably fine for tight ends. Nothing crazy. The one thing that the Bengals have been missing is a tight end, and they've been searching for a tight end. They thought maybe Irv Smith was the answer last year. No, that wasn't it. They just haven't had a good tight end to fit in that offense, and they need one. And this is a very, very good pass-catching tight end that we've seen in the past that can easily put up those numbers that we just talked about and be a top 13 pick. So keep that in mind every year. And I'm going to talk about the next tight end here in a minute, but every year we talk about a tight end that wasn't on anybody's radar that ends up shooting up the board and like, oh, well, gosh, I wish I would have had him. Laporta is one of those guys who finished tight end 1 and you got him in the 10th round or later last year. So keep that in mind. Our final sleeper.
Give it to me, Matt. Show us some states of 208 love. Give us some 208 love.
Here we go. Yep. This is Taysom Hill. And you're like, what? Taysom Hill? Are you serious? He's like 180 years old, right? Taysom Hill has been Mr. Consistent for a long time. Right now, his current ADP is 196. He's tight end 20. You can get him in the 17th round. He goes around Ertz, Henry, Conklin. Last year, he had 81 rushes for 401 yards, 4 TDs. And you can see the stats, 33 receptions for 219 and 6 TDs. That's 10 TDs. You realized he finished as the tight end 7 last year, above Ferguson, McBride, Andrews, Pitts, and Kincaid. I don't think people quite understand that.
That's crazy.
So now I'm thinking, okay, so then tell me what's changed for the Saints offense. Has anything really changed? No. Everybody's still there. His floor could be a top 12 easy again, and you're getting him for nothing. So go get him, draft him. Just make sure he's listed as a tight end in your league. And the reason why I say this, some formats have him listed as a QB, and you need to make sure he's listed as a tight end. But as a second tight end or super late flyer, I don't know why you wouldn't pick him up. The Saints use him. I mean, he's Mr. Everything. He's been that way from everywhere. He's from our home state, so you have to go get him.
Good old Idaho boy.
He's being used by the Saints like we wish the Raiders would use Brock Bowers. Put him everywhere, man. He's just an athlete. So this to me is an easy one. Can he get there? Sure. He's certainly going to beat top 20 expectation, if not double it. But I can see him in I think even on our tight end ranking, we had him at 12, 13. So this was a no-brainer for me.
I love that in the preseason he was taking handoffs in the backfield. Like they don't. I think one of the things for me that I love about Taysom Hill for the Saints, one thing that has changed, I think they've lost a little bit of faith in their backup running back Kendre Miller, and so they don't really have any backups to really spell Alvin Kamara. And Taysom Hill, if you put him in the backfield, it could be any package with him. He could run the ball, run it well. He's a threat out of the backfield as a receiver. Like, he just fits that mold as literally offensive weapon, and he is still doing it. How old is he? Is he 32?
He just turned 34 here 3 days ago. 34. So he's still, there'll be a fall eventually, but I don't think it's this year. I think they're going to get involved. If they didn't like him, they would have cut him. They're not going to cut him. They used him all over the place. This might be the last year you can utilize him, but 6'2", 220, just a heck of an athlete. Been doing it for a long time. So easy top. Like I said, his floor is top 12 in my mind, top 13, and you get him for nothing. So go pick him up. Well, that is our sleeper show, Chance. We crushed it. And again, we'll put receipts out there for people to take a look at.
And like I said, everyone loves a good sleep. Like, everyone loves to listen and be validated in their sleepers, right? And I really think that our sleepers, even especially our tight ends, like, they're not guys that most people think of when they're like, oh yeah, that sounds totally like a sleeper. And even I thought, listen, tooting our own horn, I am excited to keep our receipts. I think those are great. If you're listening to this podcast, you're welcome. Okay. I hope that I can say that with confidence come week 17 and you're in your fantasy championships. I hope I can say you're welcome then. But I love a good sleeper.
Yep, agreed. Me too. Always trying to find that diamond in the rough. It always feels like you're one player away from getting to that championship, and we just gave you potentially 6 of them that can get you there. So thanks for hanging with us, everybody. Lionberry, I know you're watching. Thanks for hanging out with us. He will be back here probably this weekend, and we've got some more stuff upcoming for you. Chance, any final thoughts before we peel out of here?
I just can't wait for this week with like football news ramping up. I hope we get some Ayuk news. I'm excited to see who's cut. If you've already drafted, make sure you keep eyes on that waiver wire, because some of those late round guys that you drafted, they might not make the team at this point. You might have a guy who's picked up by another team who would be a really great value that you could scoop up on waiver wires. But man, we're less, 10 days, 12 days away from football. Oh,
right around the corner. Football is back. Let's get rolling. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Remember, subscribe, smash that like button, and we will see you guys next time.